Stephen.
Can I ask a question that might help us understand what informs this decision? Does the president feel that young people who came to this country illegally, who came of age here, who have jobs here, who went to school here, are those people Americans or are they foreign nationals?
Look, I'm not going to get into the back and forth while we're in the process of finalizing the details on this, but we're going to be working on that throughout the weekend and make that announcement on Tuesday.
Sarah, the president said, we love dreamers today, and in April he said the dreamers should rest easy. You know the president. Is it conceivable that he could end this program and send all these people out of the country after saying things like that?
I knew I'd get another chance to say this. We're finalizing those details, and we're finalizing this decision. It is part of the answer is that we're finalizing this decision, and that would certainly be part of the details of the announcement on Tuesday.
Sarah, thanks. The president has said that if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall. Is he backing down from that threat now?
No, the president's still very much committed to building the wall.
So there's a report out, though, in the Washington Post that basically says he's, you got a smile there on your face, that he's backing away.
Well, you know how I feel about using other outlets as your source.
Is it wrong, then?
I think the president's been pretty clear what his position is. I would take that as the president's position over a report on what it is. Sarah.
Shifting back to Hurricane Harvey, has the president made a decision what charities he's going to donate to? Do you know if that's going to be coming from his own money or from the Trump Foundation?
He has not finalized where all of that will go, and I was actually going to use that as it's a perfect segue to remind everybody if you have suggestions. He is very open to hearing those. We've gotten a couple, but please send more if you have them. John Gizzi. Oh, sorry.
Whether it's going to be his personal money or money from the
I haven't had a chance to do that, but I will. Alex.
Poll released by Fox News on Wednesday said that 56% of Americans think the president is tearing the country apart. And approval rating polls are usually in the 30s. How do these poll numbers affect how the president governs?
I think a lot of these polls are the same polls that predicted that Donald Trump would never be the president, and he's sitting in the Oval Office as I stand here. So I don't have a lot of faith in a lot of these polls. I think if you look at what he's been doing this week, particularly in terms of focusing on unifying the nation, on Hurricane Harvey recovery, talking about tax reform, an issue that's got very wide bipartisan support. The numbers, frankly, that we are focused on and that this administration cares about aren't poll numbers, but we care about 94% of Americans who get assistance to file their taxes, that the majority of Americans thinks the tax code is unfair, and that 70% of individuals in 10 key states support broad-based tax reform. The numbers that we're focused on have to do with actual problems that Americans are facing. The numbers that we're focused on are the ones that actually impact day-to-day life for all Americans. That's what we're focused on. Certainly not silly polls that, frankly, weren't much use to us in the election, and certainly I don't think are now. Glenn?
Sarah, my paper just published a story that Robert Mueller has obtained a copy of a letter drafted by President Trump and written in part by Stephen Miller and other aides around the time of the dismissal of FBI Director James Comey that enumerates a rationale for having him removed that focuses principally on the Russia investigation. A couple of quick questions. First of all, can you confirm the existence of that letter? Secondly, can that letter be made public? And thirdly, we report that Don McGahn thought it was inappropriate. Can you discuss whether or not you or the president believe that drafting such a letter was appropriate at that time?
I'm not going to get into any of that. I think we covered a lot of those things very extensively during that time. As Ty Cobb said earlier today, to the extent the special prosecutor is interested in these matters, we will be fully transparent with his investigation. And frankly, I don't have anything to add beyond that.
Can we get a copy of the letter?
Again, we're going to work with the special prosecutor, as Ty said, and we'll work through that process. April?
She says April, I'm sorry. On DACA, I'm sorry. On the issue of DACA, the vice president said that the president will use a big heart in making this decision. What is the definition of a big heart?
Again, I'm not going to get into the back and forth on this until there's a finalized decision, which we're in the process of doing, and we'll make that announcement on Tuesday.
I have one more. On jobs. What is this White House saying about jobs, particularly as the unemployment rate is at 4.4%, but you have continuation historically of African American and Latino rates that are higher. For August, the African American unemployment rate 7.7%, the Latino rate 5.2%, the white rate 3.9%. A few weeks ago, Stephen Miller was at this podium talking about the black unemployment rate versus that of the immigrants. Is there going to be a targeted approach? I mean, these numbers bear to show that there is a difference when it comes to minority American unemployment versus mainstream American.
I think you make a great point for why we need tax reform. It's one of the primary reasons that that's a top priority for this administration, is to do a massive overhaul of the system so that we have a better environment. We're creating more jobs, higher paying jobs, and I think that's a perfect example. There were 150,000 new jobs created over this time period, and since the president came into office, 1.2 million new jobs. We are incredibly focused on this. This is not just something that we've been talking about, but something that the president has been very active in since day one. He's gotten rid of over 800 regulations that have created a better environment for job creation. We're continuing to focus on that primarily through tax reform, and that's why it's such a big deal for us in the fall. Hallie?
If I can ask 2 questions on that. Given the president's going to be obviously pretty busy on Saturday down in that region, you've said 19 times that he's going to be finalizing the decision in the next 3 days. Can you specifically explain what is going to change between now and Tuesday, given that we heard the president talk in the Oval Office about a decision coming this weekend? What specifically is he doing in these next 3 days that he hasn't done so far?
Look, I think this is a pretty complicated process, as you all know, and we want to work through every bit of that, and that's what he's doing. He's making sure he takes the diligent time and effort and attention that this very important issue deserves.
And given that it's so important, I just kind of want to personalize a little. There's a guy in Texas right now, Jesus Contreras. He's a paramedic. He's been working since the storm hit to help people in the community in and around Texas. He also happens to be a dreamer. What's the president's message to Jesus?
I think it's the same message that he said many times before. This president is a president that loves people, and we are working on the best decision possible, and we'll announce it on Tuesday. Charlie.
New reports are detailing how under the Obama administration, the group Antifa was being watched, and their activities were declared as domestic terrorist violence. My question is, was the president or his chief of staff aware of those investigations and reports before Charlottesville?
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask, and I haven't had that conversation, Charlie.
Is he tracking the rise of violence from this group going forward?
I'm sorry, is he what?
Is he tracking the rise of violence from these groups going forward?
I think we're certainly, constantly monitoring all violence across the country as best we can, and something certainly that the Department of Homeland Security and the administration takes very seriously, and is constantly looking for ways to end all violence in all forms. So certainly that would qualify. Alexis.
Follow-up to Hallie's question for a moment. I think I read there were 120,000 dreamers in the state of Texas. Is that in any way weighing on the president's decision about DACA and what the situation there is?
Again, I think that this isn't a decision that the president takes lightly, and he's taking time and diligent effort to make sure that he goes through every bit of the process, and he'll continue to do that and make that announcement on Tuesday. I'm sorry?
Is what's happening in Texas and even Louisiana
I think the
perhaps weighing
decision
on him
itself is weighing on him, certainly. Margaret?
Thanks, Sarah. I've got 2. The first one is coming back after the Labor Day weekend. There's obviously a lot of stuff on the agenda.
It's going to be a busy September.
There were some tensions between the president and congressional Republicans over the summer, and I'm just wondering if he has a message for them that you would want to share about any reset that he hopes to effect in the next 4 days before he comes back. And I also wanted to ask you, with all the caveats that you're loath to discuss this letter that is part of an investigation.
Let me answer the first question so we don't get lost in that. I think that the message that the president would have for the members of Congress would be, let's get to work. You've had a nice long break here, and we've got a lot of things to do. We've got some big commitments to the American people that we need to fulfill, and we need to do some really big and bold things throughout the fall, and hopefully they'll get on board and be part of that process.
The letter, as reported, suggests that some of the rationale did have to do with Russia, but the president initially talked about Hillary Clinton, and I'm wondering whether you can square those two for us. Do you think his messages, do you think there's now an inconsistency that needs to be addressed? And would you like to address it from the podium?
I'm not sure I'm following fully your question, but as I said earlier, in reference to the letter and the Comey firing, we have discussed that extensively. In fact, I've done that many times from this podium, and I'll refer you back to Ty Cobb's statement that I read earlier. There's nothing more to add on that. Sure.
Sarah, can I drill down on what is driving the DACA review and final decision? Is the president reviewing the merits of the DACA policy, or is he reviewing the legality and validity of the process the Obama administration used to grant it? In other words, if Congress were to move to protect the Dreamers, would he be in support of that? Would he sign on to such an effort? There does seem to be interest there. What's he reviewing?
Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but since you guys are, then I guess I have no choice to be. But we're continuing to work through this decision process, and I'm not going to go any further than that. The president's made a lot of statements on this, and he's going through all of the details of this very thoroughly, and once a final decision is made and those details are ironed out, we'll let you guys know on Tuesday. Just as we're wrapping up here, a reminder, if you have suggestions for the president to contribute to, that would be great if you could get those to us by the end of the day. And also, we encourage everybody to participate in the National Day of Prayer, and hope you have a good Labor Day weekend. Thanks so much, guys.